Good evening, everyone.
皆さんこんばんは。
I'm happy to be in Nagoya once again, and I'm grateful to the groups who have organized this meeting, thus giving me a further opportunity of sharing with you my information. This information is, for some people, completely new. It is somewhat abstruse and difficult to take in at a first hearing. Also, some of it will seem to run contrary to accepted beliefs, and so for that very reason presents problems. But times are changing, and the time has come for information of this kind to become generally known. Complete belief that what I say is true is not necessary. Rather, an open-minded belief in the possibility that these events are truly happening would be more simple for a greater number of people. Well, I myself have complete conviction in the veracity of what I have to say. I present it to you for your consideration only, to awaken you to what is happening, the changes, momentous changes which are taking place, and so preparing you for these events. What I have to say is largely prophecy and cannot be proved. So I don't, I'm afraid, bring the truth, the proof which you might be demanding. All I ask is that you keep an open mind, so that as the events take place, you will be less astonished, more in touch with the reality that is presenting itself to the world. At the very least, I shall be, if you can go home this evening with a renewed hope for the future of your children and their children, then I shall be perfectly satisfied. For despite the changes which are taking place, this is most certainly a message of hope. We are all aware of it. For many people, this change is very distasteful. It hurts. Much of it is the result of our own work, what we have done to bring harm to ourselves. But much of it too is the result of great cosmic events which bring about these changes. Essentially, there are three great events which are bringing humanity into a new state of being. Some are pleasant and some are, for the moment, unpleasant. But the unpleasant ones are certainly the result of our own wrong action in the past, and so we have no one to blame but ourselves. But the tendency is towards better times, happier times for the world. Because these great events, three in number at the present time, present an opportunity for humanity to make changes and to come to decisions which will transform the ways of living of today into something much better for the happiness of man. In particular, there are three great happenings which, for the most part, most people don't know about. They're not obvious. The first is cosmic, something over which we have no control. We are entering a new age, a new kind of civilization, different from anything we have known before. And this time can really be seen as a time in which we are experiencing the birth pangs of a new civilization, knowing, hopefully, that these will change and enlarge the scope of humanity's life, bring us into a greater state of unity, and help us to put behind us the faults and mistakes of the past. This new age, new civilization, is the result of cosmic changes. Our solar system, of which this planet is a part, makes a journey in space which takes approximately 25 to 26,000 years in relation to the constellations of our zodiac. And in that journey, it passes through the sphere of influence of each of the constellations which make up our zodiac. So that roughly every 2,150 years or so, this solar system becomes the receptive of the energies which pour out into space from these constellations. For the last 2,150 years, we were in the age of Pisces, passing through the sphere of influence of Pisces. And that has made, as a result of our handling of the energies of Pisces, the world as we know it today, with all its problems, all its difficulties, all its mistakes, all its tensions and crises. And having gone through the age of Pisces, we are now entering the next age, the age of Aquarius. From now on, because we're only at the beginning of Aquarius, these energies of Aquarius will dominate the life of not only the Earth, but of every planet of our system. The energies of Pisces are completely different from the coming energies of Aquarius, different in quality. As we have used them, reacted to them, the energies of Pisces have divided the world, brought us to a point of extreme tension and serious disarray. The energies of Aquarius are the energies of synthesis. They fuse and blend humanity together. The energies of Pisces began to recede as we moved through into Aquarius in 1625. The energies of Aquarius began to come in 1675. And now they are roughly equal. But those of Aquarius are the weak end of them. They are going, and the energies of Aquarius are mounting in potency with every day that passes. And this has a powerful, if invisible, effect on humanity. The world is really divided into two groups of people. One, usually older, who love the energies of Pisces. It's what they know and experienced, and they are familiar, and they're afraid of incoming energies. and they see the loss of the structures, political, economic, religious, social, scientific, educational, cultural, which were built up in the age of Pisces and are falling away because the energies of Pisces are falling away. Then there are the other half of people, usually younger, but not exclusively so. They may not know what is happening, but they are affected by the energies of Aquarius, which are driving them in a certain direction, away from the direction that was familiar in the age of Pisces. And these younger people want change. They are not afraid of the future. Many are happy to see the destruction of the old, unwieldy, and for humanity, not always happy energies of Pisces. They want a new way, they want justice, they want a more fair life for everybody. They want freedom. They really want what was sounded during the French Revolution all those years ago. They want liberty, freedom. They want brotherhood. And they want equality. They are no longer able to live in a world which is so torn apart, which is so unequal, so unjust to humanity, in which the idea of brotherhood can hardly show its face. And so we have the tensions of today, which are mounting to a climax. At the same time, we have another extraordinary event, the emergence of our spiritual hierarchy of masters and initiates openly into the world. This is largely unknown to the world. And yet, I assure you it is taking place, and in the very near future, it will become commonplace to most people. Every kingdom grows out of the kingdom below it. The first to be laid down is the mineral kingdom. From the mineral grew the vegetable kingdom. From the vegetable grew the animal kingdom. From the animal kingdom grew the human kingdom. We owe our physical bodies to the animal kingdom. But we're not animals. We are a new kingdom, the human kingdom. Now, what most people don't know is that out of the human kingdom has been growing, is growing, and will continue to grow a new kingdom, the so-called spiritual kingdom, or the kingdom of souls, made up of those members of the human kingdom who can enlarge their consciousness and make an evolutionary change and development, not of the physical body, but of their consciousness. Essentially, all of us and everything is divine. Reflection of the divine universe in which we live. And the essence of that divinity is unity. Everything is related to everything else in the whole of cosmos. And gradually this awareness takes place in individuals who are ready for the expansion of their consciousness. And humanity are a particular part of this evolution, of this solar system. We are evolving through an expansion of our consciousness towards something we don't know yet, but some greater expression of the divinity of which we are a part. This expansion of consciousness takes place subtly, and people don't make a great effort in order to expand it. In their general life, living within the laws of life, it happens by itself. There are two great laws which dominate and rule all life on planet Earth. One is the law of cause and effect. Everything we do, everything we say, everything we think puts into effect a certain cause or causes. The effects stemming from these causes make our lives, for good or for ill. If our thoughts, our ideas, and our actions are within the law, if they are harmless and towards the better relationship between ourselves and others, then we are on the right side of the law, so to speak. If, on the other hand, our thoughts and actions are harmful and cause disruption, are destructive, then our life likewise is harmful and destructive and painful, and so we make our own lives. Our happiness goes with our living within the law, and our unhappiness is the result of working against the law. The other great law governing life on this planet is the law of rebirth. And most people, or a lot of people think that when we die, when our physical body dies, for whatever reason, then that's it. We're finished. We have ended our lives. People who believe that, of course they are entitled to the belief, but people who believe that know nothing about the law of rebirth or about the true constitution of humanity. According to the most ancient teachings in the world, we are threefold in our nature. We are essentially divine, sparks of the divine. We also have solid physical bodies and less solid astral or emotional bodies and less solid mental bodies, so that there is no direct contact between ourselves as a spark of the divine and ourselves as the person we see when we look in the mirror. This being so, the divine spark, which is our highest aspect, creates an intermediary, a divine intermediary between itself and the man or woman on the physical plane. That intermediary is the divine human soul, which incarnates over and over and over again in the dense physical bodies which we think of as ourselves. So everyone now in this room, as we see ourselves, is the end product, up to the present only, of a succession of incarnations in which our soul, divine, a reflection of our divinity, reflects itself as the human personality, over and over and over again. So creating a continuous contact and part of this divinity, which is our true reality. And that physical, emotional and mental aspect, which we sometimes think is all that we are. Now this evolution of the soul in incarnation has gone on for millions of years. And there are many members of humanity who have gone ahead of us in evolution. Human beings like us who became something greater than human beings because they gradually evolved to reflect more and more the reality of the spark of God through the human soul. Thus there is another kingdom above the human kingdom. We call it the spiritual kingdom or the kingdom of souls. Who inhabits that kingdom? Well, it's not all on one level. At the lower levels, it is human beings who have expanded their consciousness up to a point. And those who have gone even further than the average and who have become totally part of the spiritual kingdom, they are usually called the masters of wisdom. On that level even, there are masters at different levels, some more advanced than others. But a master of wisdom is a human being who has evolved his consciousness to enter the spiritual kingdom and to expand that consciousness into that of a master. For nearly 100,000 years, more like 90,000 years, the masters have lived in the remote mountain and desert areas of the world, working in the main through their disciples, men and women in the world, still ordinary but advancing human beings. A master is a human being who has perfected himself and become a divine being through the method of incarnation, the soul incarnating more and more often until the human beings became more infected by the quality of the soul and therefore became divine. And sometimes every 2,000 years or so, one of these perfected men give their teachings to humanity. If you think about it, the lives of people like Confucius, Krishna, Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, how different their lives are and were from the ordinary. The usual method for this coming into the world of such a great being is to overshadow, as it's called, the consciousness of a lesser being, a disciple. The great teachers are really the Buddhas and the Christs and so on, are so high, their vehicles, their bodies are so high in vibration, they are light. They cannot just take physical incarnation on planet Earth. So they use a body of a disciple through whom their consciousness can work. The Buddha, for example, 600 years before the Christ, came as Gautama Buddha, but he was not Gautama. Gautama was a disciple of the Buddha who used the body of the Prince Gautama to manifest at this level. Likewise, 600 years later, the Christ in Palestine used the body of his disciple, the one known generally as Jesus of Nazareth, in which he used that body for the last 3 years of Jesus' life. So that's the usual way for the manifestation of a great teacher, one of the very highest ones. There is an office in the hierarchy of masters called the world teacher. And the Buddha was the world teacher while he manifested through the Prince Gautama. Today, the world teacher is the one known generally to Christians as the Christ, by his personal name as the Lord Maitreya. Maitreya was the world teacher after the Buddha for the age of Pisces and will be still the world teacher for this coming age of Aquarius. And for thousands of years the masters have been hidden in the Himalaya, the Andes, the Rockies, the Cascades, the Urals, the Gobi and various other deserts. But immediately after the last war, the war from 1939 to 45, Maitreya announced that if humanity of its own free will would take the first steps into putting its house in order, as we say, making the changes which would bring justice and peace to the world, he would come into the world at the earliest possible moment with a large group of his disciples, the Masters of Wisdom. Maitreya said he would come when a measure of peace had been restored to the world, when the principle of sharing was beginning to govern economic affairs, and when right human relationship was beginning to be established in the world. These did not need to be perfect, but when our minds were moving in these directions, he said he himself would come and at the earliest possible moment. That earliest possible moment became the 19th of July, 1977. In 1975, the vanguard of the Masters came into the world into 5 major centers: New York, London, Geneva, Darjeeling, and Tokyo. And later into 2 minor centers, Moscow and Rome. In July 8th, Maitreya descended from his mountain in the Himalaya and came down into the plains of Pakistan. in a body of manifestation which he had been creating for the previous 5 to 6 years, which allows him for the first time in history to come into the world as a great master, the master of all the masters, in a body which looks just like yours and mine, which looks entirely real and human, but in fact is created by an act of will. So for the first time, the world teacher is in the world as the world teacher and not overshadowing a disciple. There are now 14 masters in the world, together with the master of all the masters, the Lord Maitreya. Maitreya is awaited by Christians as the Christ, Jesus Christ. They don't know the difference between Jesus, who was the vehicle that the Christ used in Palestine 2,000 years ago. Jesus, who was a disciple, is now a very advanced master himself and is the master whose base is in Rome. He is in charge of the Christian church wherever it is found. His work is to cleanse the Christian tradition of all the man-made dogmas and doctrines which have been added over the centuries, and which has presented a rather erroneous view of the Christ to the world. The Christ and Jesus, or any of the masters, is not the one and only Son of God. This is a fantasy, a glamour presented to the world by the early Christian groups. But it is not the truth. No such a person exists in the whole of cosmos. There is no such person as the one and only Son of God. Every single human being is a son of God. Muslims await Maitreya as the Imam Mahdi, the great Imam. Jews await him as the Messiah. He came to the Jews through Jesus, but was not recognized. He's awaited by Hindus as Krishna or Kalki Avatar. He is awaited by Buddhists under his name as Maitreya Buddha, the coming Buddha. But there is no real understanding of the timing of his coming into the world. For example, here in Japan, official Buddhism postulates that the coming of Maitreya Buddha will take place in about 650 million years from now. So don't hold your breath. They're all wrong about the time. The Christ, the Imam Mahdi, Krishna, the Messiah, Maitreya Buddha, they're all names for one and the same individual, the head and leader of our spiritual hierarchy of masters, and he is physically present in the world since 1977. A third tremendous event is taking place at the same time, which is the gathering of the forces of light. Who are the forces of light? Well, they are the men of spirit, spiritual workers, the masters of wisdom of our planet, and the spiritual workers the masters of the various other planets of our own solar system, which are purported not to be able to hold life. For the last over 60 years, the governments of this planet have done a great disservice to humanity, quite apart from their disgraceful incompetence, which has brought about crisis after crisis, political and economic, till today we are immersed in the biggest crisis of all. The governments have disgracefully, deliberately hidden from humanity the reality, their knowledge of the reality of what we call UFOs, flying saucers, spacecraft in our world. Not only that, but some of them denigrate, wherever possible, the work and activities of the inhabitants of the UFOs, accuse them of all manner of wrongdoing, of hideous actions vis-à-vis humanity, thereby creating a tremendous fear in humanity about the nature of the inhabitants of the UFOs. They have known from the early 40s and 50s that the spacecraft exist. All the governments have irrefutable evidence of this fact. And now some of them are in process of destroying this evidence because they realize that the truth is beginning to come out and they are already beginning to cover their tracks. The people, the inhabitants of the UFOs, the flying saucers, are engaged on a great spiritual mission to Earth, to help and aid us in every way they can within the law of karma and help us to move with not too great a pain from the age of Pisces to that of Aquarius. The greatest part of their work, that takes up perhaps 90% of their time, is spent on mopping up, making positive what is negative in our polluted planet. Especially the most dangerous pollution of all, that caused by atomic radiation. We have hundreds now of nuclear power stations in the world, and many nations are planning to create hundreds more because they are convinced this is clean and does not add to the heating up of the earth. Nothing could be further from the truth. From every nuclear power station, every nuclear experimentation, vis-à-vis bombs or whatever, is thrown, emitted into our atmosphere, nuclear radiation at levels which our present science cannot measure. Those clever scientists who think that they have tamed nuclear energy and can control it are totally mistaken. It is simply that they do not have the technology to measure the emissions of nuclear radiation above gas, because they limit the matter aspect of the planet to just three states: solid physical, liquid physical, and gaseous physical. The masters, who are the master scientists of the world, postulate the existence of four further aspects of matter above gas, the so-called etheric levels of matter. Now, most of the damage done to humanity's system, and from the master's point of view, pollution is the major killer in the world. It breaks down humanity's immune system and so makes us open to all manner of diseases which would otherwise not affect us. People wonder, why is there this sudden increase in Alzheimer's disease all over the world at younger and younger ages? Alzheimer's used to be seen as a disease for the very old. But today, middle-aged and even young people are dying of Alzheimer's, being left to rot with Alzheimer's in their middle or young age. And no one knows why. It's the result of direct radiation at the etheric levels of matter. And the space brothers, those from mainly Mars and Venus, who you are told do not contain life, but do in fact contain much life, but at the etheric level of matter, invisible to humanity unless you have etheric vision. The scientists, the astronomers, posit the existence of what they call dark matter. They can't see it, they can't find it, but their calculations tell them that it is there. So they call it dark matter. Very simply, what the scientists call dark matter are the etheric planes of matter, those above what we call gas. So the space brothers come mainly from Mars and Venus, our neighboring planets, but also from many of the other planets, Jupiter and Saturn and so on. Most of them are made on Mars, and they are made by thought, and by their behavior in our skies. You can see that the technology of Mars is way, way beyond that of Earth. Of course, if you went to Mars, you would see nobody. If you went to Venus, you would see nobody. So the scientists say there is nobody on the other planets, Mars, Venus, so on. But actually, there are more people on Mars than there are on Earth. And we have 6.7 billion people at the moment on Earth. There are about 9 billion people on Mars, which is a much smaller planet. If you had etheric vision, which they have, you would see them just as they see each other. The vehicles are etheric. The spacecraft, the UFOs, likewise are etheric. They're made of etheric matter. So they're not solid, what we would call solid physical. That's why they are like lights in the sky. When they want to appear, they can lower the vibrational rate of the vehicle until they come within our range of vision. And when they want to not be seen, they lift the vibration again up to the etheric level, their normal level, and they disappear. That is why UFOs suddenly disappear from sight, having been there for a time. So what is their real purpose? It is to help Earth. It's a gathering of the forces of light. They are coming as the forces of light of these other planets to this planet and working with the forces of light of our planet to reinstate a better, more spiritual life on planet Earth. They create the so-called crop circles. The British government pays money to the farmers in the south of England to plough up their crops as soon as a crop circle appears. And crop circles appear in the south of England more than anywhere else in the world because Maitreya is in London. It's a spiritual mission they're on, and they do it totally dedicated, spending enormous lengths of time working to rectify this planet, to save this planet from the destruction that we are imposing on the planet. They are also doing something else, creating a new technology for humanity on planet Earth, laying the foundations for that new technology which will transform life on Earth, laying the foundations for a way of finding the energy of the sun and making it useful in relation to the magnetic energy of our planet itself. Creating what Maitreya calls the technology of light, the science of light, which will give us completely safe, unlimited energy for every single purpose and need. So we can stop polluting the planet. We can stop heating up the planet. And the masters know what we have done and what needs to be done to rectify what we have done and to create a new civilization based on a completely different basis. Very soon you will see Maitreya on television, albeit not announced as Maitreya, not introduced as Maitreya. Maitreya is working what we call incognito. What are his priorities? Well, the highest priority must be that of peace. We have so many atomic bombs in the world, nuclear bombs compared with which those that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki are like toys. And so unless we can find a way to make peace, we can destroy all life on planet Earth. All life, human and subhuman alike. So we need peace. How can we get peace? Millions long for peace, and many are working even now to destroy the little peace that we have. Terrorism is growing throughout the world. Why do we have wars? Why do we have terrorism? Terrorism is largely, there are a number of reasons, but it's largely because we have injustice in the world. And as long as we have injustice, we will not have peace. We will have wars. And a little war can become a big war, and the major war would destroy all life. It would be nuclear and would leave nothing in the world for millions and millions of years. We have free will. What do we want? What would you want? A continuation of the present divisions, separations, greed and selfishness in the world, or a peaceful solution to our problems. Millions in the world live in poverty.
生きてい
About
ます。
half the world are poor. Millions die every year of starvation in a world filled with food, with a huge surplus of food per capita. Maitreya says, how can you support this degradation? And he comes to show us how important it is, how urgent it is to create peace, and how easy it is to create peace. And he says the solution is in your hands. You have it. To get peace, you must have justice. There will never be peace if there's injustice in the world. And half the world truly, or in their mind, believes that they have injustice. The world is unjust to them. The G7 or G8 nations of the world run the world for their own benefit. And they keep this fantasy going through the stock markets of the world, which rise and fall and reflect any little greedy fear that enters into people's mind when some nation has a problem and needs help, like Greece at the moment. We have to look at the whole thing differently. Realize that we are one. Humanity is made up of brothers and sisters of one group, one kingdom called the human kingdom. An important, but not the only important kingdom in the world. But we are one,
私た
and
ち
we
は
all need the same things. Apart from mobile telephones, we need enough food, we need shelter, we need health care, and we need education. Everybody in the world needs these 4 things. These are fundamental human rights. But there is no nation in the world where you have automatically any of these, let alone all of these, unless you have money. So we create a mad, unjust world. We play God. We say who will die, who will suffer starvation and neglect, and who will live well. And we don't have the right to do this. The resources of the world are given by divine providence for all people, to feed all the people. Maitreya says, nothing so moves me to grief as this shame. The crime of separation must be driven from this earth. I affirm that as my purpose. Maitreya is already talking on television in America and will do so throughout the world. Incognito, unannounced as Maitreya, simply as one of us, he will come on television in this country and other countries throughout the world, showing us how easy it is to create peace and how vitally important it is to create peace. And he says, to get peace, all you have to do is to create justice. And how do you create justice? Only one thing will create justice: when there is enough trust. Otherwise, there will never be justice. And how do you get the trust? Only one thing will create this trust: the acceptance that we, humanity, are one, and so share the resources of the world. When you share, you recognize God in your brother, says Maitreya. When you share, the first step into sharing is the first step into your divinity. When you share, you create the trust essential to create justice and peace. All other methods have been tried and have failed and led inevitably to separation and war. We can no longer afford another war. It would be nuclear and would destroy all life. So it is in our hands, our own hands, we have the answer. We must make it known. It won't happen by itself. Don't think Maitreya is just coming to make peace and justice and so on. He isn't. He's coming, he is here to show us that that is what is necessary. But we have to do it. Nothing happens by itself. When enough people are responding to Maitreya's teaching, even though they do not know that he is here or do not know that it is Maitreya, we will come to what is called the Day of Declaration. When enough people are responding, they will demand of the government that Maitreya be asked to speak to the whole world. The television networks will be linked together so that for the first time in history, the world teacher can appear to speak to the whole of humanity. Maitreya is omniscient and omnipresent, and the masters, you might know, use telepathy. They don't speak in the ordinary way, they use telepathy all the time. And eventually all humanity will use telepathy as a natural way to speak. On the Day of Declaration, Maitreya will overshadow the minds, come into telepathic rapport with the whole of adult humanity. And each of us will hear him speak in our own language. So you will hear him inwardly in Japanese, the Chinese in Chinese, the French in French, the Russians in Russians, the Spanish in Spanish, and so on throughout the world. Your brain will automatically transform his thoughts into what you hear. He will show how old humanity is, how long we have been in incarnation, and how far we have fallen from the heights, the spiritual heights where once we were, into this mediocre business that we run today as society. He will show a picture of the future, the most wonderful technology which the future holds for us, the technology of light at the basis of it, which will free humanity to be human, to be what we are, gods in incarnation, to be creative as gods are creative, as divinity itself is creative. All it needs is acceptance that we are one, and therefore the acceptance of the principle of sharing. During this time, Maitreya's energy of love, he is the Lord of love, will pour out through the hearts of all humanity. It will be an extraordinary experience. People will feel like children again, filled with the joy and the beauty of this love, and touching the very heart of creation itself, divinity itself. Feeling as we thought we were little children of 4 and 5, experiencing the beauty and the vastness, the mystery of life. That will be the most extraordinary experience for all people living today, and will set us on the path to the future. Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。